enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
Welcome to And Good Company. I am Sara Fiedelholtz, a conversationalist. I am pleased to be in the company of Réna Bradley, the Community Development Director for Bridge of Grace Compassionate Ministries Center. Bradley is an architect and community advocate who is driven by her desire to transform neighborhoods through relationships, changing built environments, and using an integration of faith. Welcome.
Thank you, Sara. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. So your efforts are focused on the Mount Vernon Park neighborhood on Fort Wayne's southeast side.
Yes.
So I'm going to put it in a little context for people.
Sure.
So the boundaries are Pettit Avenue in the north, Paulding Road in the south, St. Anthony Boulevard in the east, and Hannah in the west.
Yep.
Hannah Street
South
in the
Anthony.
west. Yeah,
Yes.
South Anthony. Okay.
You got it.
The population is 46% are under the age of 25. 45% of the residents are African American. 40% of the population is employed, and of that, 42% are blue-collar workers. The average household income is $38,000. 57% of the population, however, earn less than $25,000. 66% have a high school degree. Now, in the United States, violent crime is ranked on a scale of 1 to 100. Mount Vernon's rank or rating scale is 64.1. The U.S. average is 22.7.
Sure.
For property crime, the rank, again, is scaled from 1 to 100, and Mount Vernon is 74.7, and the U.S. average is 35.4. Okay, so within this context and looking at, we're going to be talking about the Mount Vernon Park neighborhood and your efforts. You said that your work within as a community director and working with Bridges of Grace is your dream job.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Imagine that. So it's my dream job because, as weird as it might sound, I felt like my calling in life was to be an architectural missionary, right? So to help spread the love of Christ, using design as a tool to help equip and mobilize community members to create the space that they want to live in. There are a couple of reasons why that's important. One is because I just think our built environments impact us. You know, you go to a grocery store and things are placed certain ways for certain reasons. You go into a hospital and they've tracked that if you have a room that looks out at a park instead of a brick wall, that you'll report less pain, you'll heal faster. Some people say your mortality rates, will be lower even years later. So the spaces that we inhabit impact us. So my thought was that, well, if the spaces around us impact us so much, how can we in turn impact those spaces so that they're positive and building us up as community members? So yeah, it is my dream job and I love doing it.
So how do you deal with the fact, though, that the perception that broken windows and trash isn't picked up, or when residents in the neighborhood don't necessarily take care of their lawns? I mean, and that's a perception of what people perceive of that neighborhood. So how do you feel that, how do you work with that in terms of getting residents to understand the importance of taking care of the environment?
Well, our residents, at least from what I've seen, care deeply. They care deeply about their homes. They care deeply about their communities. They care deeply about their families and their kids. So in Mount Vernon Park, one of the first things that happened when Bridge of Grace opened, which predates me, was that we started organizing trash pickups, just because there was such a proliferation of trash in the neighborhood back then. And doing that, we also started doing prayer walks. We started doing home safety assessments with our local fire departments and police departments. And we saw crime, even though the stats are still a bit higher than the national average, decline dramatically. So we've seen a 55% reduction in crime over the course of about 5 years, according to the FBI uniform crime stats. So now when we go through our neighborhood and when we organize the Great American Cleanup, we barely fill up one bag of trash just because there's not a ton of trash in the community. Now, what we do see and do still struggle with is that some people dump their trash in our community, or unfortunately now with our trash pickup systems, because the trucks are made a bit differently, every trash day we see a proliferation of trash in our neighborhood. And because we know it can have such a big impact on our community, that just communicating via the environment, if you would, that trash dumping is not acceptable here, that small crimes are not acceptable here, we know that that can change the nature of how people perceive our community and how they act in our community. So we do our best to get a handle on that. But our neighbors, by and large, care very deeply about the community. And I think, honestly, when it came to the trash pickup and why that made such a difference, was just that people knew that there was a community that they could plug into that was out there doing it with them. You know, when it's just you trying to pick up bags and bags and bags and bags, or mountains and mountains and mountains of trash from your neighborhood, you one stick in a trash bag, that can feel daunting.
Right.
And if the next day you drive, you come home again, and there's more trash again, it can feel defeating. But when you have a community rallying behind you, or you have your neighbors out there with you, all of a sudden you feel like a force to be reckoned with. And then it's much easier to maintain that condition once you mobilize everybody and get them out than it would be if it was just a single person.
And how do you define community?
I think community is just the people you're around and the folks that you hopefully love. So our neighborhood is a community. Our school is a community. Our churches are a community. But that's a good one. I hadn't really thought much about how I define community. I just define community as relationships, the people you're close to.
And some people think that in order to build a sense of community, that you need a place that becomes like the gathering point that brings people together so that they can have experiences like maybe a community center or maybe a school or a library. And do you think that Mount Vernon has that? And what would you say is that? Is it around the church, or what do you think it is that brings the neighborhood together to create this sense of community?
I guess I push back against that a little bit. So, because I think a lot of people think the same thing about church, right? Or capital C church, that in order to have church, that you have to have a building that people come to or a place that people congregate. And I think, especially during this global pandemic, we've all been shown that church is not limited to a single building or a structure. And I think the same thing is true of community. It's just people being in proximity and being close. And I think you can build a sense of community by creating opportunities for people to come together, to talk to one another, to laugh, to eat, to sing, to dance. And I think Bridge of Grace has done a good job of trying to create those social spaces, but so has Faith Lutheran on the community's northeast end, providing hot meals and a weekly, I think they have like a worship night service. So has Good Hope. So has Canaan Baptist. So has Fairhaven Mennonite. So has any number of other organizations and churches who are present in the neighborhood try to create those spaces where different folks who have different needs can all plug in and get to know each other. So a little different answer,
Right.
but
Well, you've been known to be one to push back on a lot of issues. And so one of the things in your work as a community development and using the sense of place in your design and aesthetic is the idea of taking a look at some of the vacant lots and parks and properties within the Mount Vernon neighborhood. So tell me about what you've done there and how have you excited the community, especially since a large majority of your residents are under the age of 25.
Right on. So one project that we did was the Tired a Lot Summer Studio, which was way too fun for me. My favorite job when I was 16 was being a camp counselor. And I loved my parents. Before that, I worked at my parents' store. But being a camp counselor was just a riot. I got to play and get paid for it. But when it came to the Vacant Lot Activation, the idea from that initially came from the neighborhood. When we first arrived at the neighborhood, when Javier first arrived and he founded Bridge of Grace, and when I first arrived to really kick off our community development efforts, we reached out to the neighborhood and said, what do you want? What do you want to see in your community? What do you see? What's your dream community? What do you love about living here? And how can this place be more like your dream community? And our neighbors told us, we want it to be more beautiful. We want more opportunities to get together. We want our kids to be more occupied. And that there was a certain lack of opportunity for creative arts influenced things. So being an architect, I was just like, okay, I can figure out beautification. I can figure out social space. And what if we did those at the same time? So I noticed that our neighborhood at the time had 15 vacant lots within its boundaries. And I thought to myself, these are awesome opportunities to create beautification. These are awesome opportunities to create social space. And what if, just what if, our teenagers were the designers of these spaces? So we launched Tired a Lot, and it's called that because we use things like tires and pallets to activate vacant lots in our neighborhood. And the whole idea was that our kids would be the designers, and we teach them. We teach them about problem solving. We teach them about challenges, that if you can identify a challenge, you can generate a solution. You can generate a solution, you can build it. If you can build it, you can figure out how to refine it and make it even better, and you can teach others. So I think they gained a skill set during that of understanding how to be problem seekers and problem solvers, and to know their own agency. And then we used upcycled materials like tires and pallets just to instill that sense of resourcefulness, but also to keep our solutions low cost, so that if any other neighborhood who has resources that are similar to ours wanted to do something similar, that they'd be able to do so and hopefully activate a lot for $2,500 or less.
And how many of the 15 vacant lots are left?
Well, right now we've activated 3. One with a playground, one with an outdoor performing arts center, and one that's being completed right now with like a kind of cool lounge space. And then one, we were really fortunate to have a partnership with Habitat for Humanity, so they built a house on one lot. So we've taken care of 4. And I think another few in the neighborhood have since been purchased and mowed, and people are taking good care of those.
Well, you have it's a 5-year relationship with Habitat for Humanity.
Yes.
To build homes. And one of the interesting things is that the idea that when people start in a neighborhood like Mount Vernon, is that they think that success is being able to leave the neighborhood and not staying when they are able, achieve certain success in their career.
Right.
So that's one issue. The other issue is that the lack of homes being built in a neighborhood. The average age of a median home in Mount Vernon was built in 1955.
Sure.
And since 2010, only 7 new homes have been built. So how does the fact of people thinking that they don't necessarily want to go somewhere else when they succeed, or the fact that there isn't new homes and new building happening, what does that do for the development of a neighborhood?
Sure. So it's true that a lot of people in communities like ours throughout the U.S., the fact of the matter is that because they feel unsafe, or they might not feel like the best environment, people want to leave, or leaving becomes the metric of success. I made it, like I made it out, is what people think. But in our community, what we try to model and what we try to instill in our community members is that this place can change. It can change, and it can change in a way that's positive. It can grow, it can evolve, it can become better. And you, yes, you, can be the catalyst of that change in the neighborhood. So we try to kind of hit that head on with programs like Tired a Lot, or others that cultivate and build our local talent within the neighborhood, so that they can see it growing and changing as they're growing and changing as individuals. When it comes to housing, there's a real need, there's a real demand, and a lot of people in our community, I think those who want to become homeowners right now, there is very limited opportunity to become homeowners. Those who want something a little bigger for their families are very limited in what we have to offer for larger families. And it's not that people don't want to live in Southeast, it's that the types of properties they want to live in aren't there. So we welcome it. We're really glad that Habitat's there and that they're building the beautiful style of homes that they're building that fit in with our neighborhood. They're a decent size, they're affordable. And we hope that others, as the neighborhoods are shored up, as they become safer, as our community continues to demonstrate their want and need and willingness to work for better, that we'll see more folks just building, more solid quality housing stock. But I've had a number of people come up to us and say, hey, where can I find this house in Southeast, because they want to be near their friends and they want to be near their family. And right now that housing stock just isn't there, but it feels like it's starting to come.
And partly when you're looking to develop a neighborhood, I mean, there's sort of, I think, two things that need to happen at the same time. One is you have to have the internal investment from the people who live in the community. But there also has to be the external investment from the city and the county. So for instance, in Mount Vernon, there's a need for more sidewalks, the lack of access to transportation, and also the issues of lighting. So how do you address those issues? Because also a lot of times people in the Southeast Side feel that with all the development and the focus on downtown, that they don't feel that they're getting attention or even a seat at the table to say, what do we need for our community? So how do you address that and build that relationship with external forces, and also to help show residents that there are ways to work and have an impact with city leaders and the county to develop the neighborhood?
So relationships are built slowly and over time. We've had really awesome relationship with our city. And so I'm really grateful for our community development departments and other, I shouldn't name them because I can't name all the people that have helped us out. But when it comes to things like infrastructure and sidewalks, I think number one, what we have to do as community members, so starting from the grassroots angle, is bring those issues to people's minds and to the fore. Because a lot of people who don't live in the neighborhood just aren't aware or seem not to be aware of the issues facing our communities. Or they have measures that are put in place that feel equal on the surface, but don't necessarily get down to the level of equity, in that they don't respond to the context of a specific community or an individual's circumstance. For example, when you mentioned the sidewalks, there is an awesome 50-50 cost share in our community, where the city, if you're willing to pay 50% as a homeowner to have the sidewalk repaired in front of your home, the city will pick up the other 50%. And if you can't do it all at once, they'll give you a 10-year loan. So you're paying something like $50 a year to have that sidewalk repaired. But if you're in a neighborhood like ours, where the rental rate is something near 70%, that means that 70% of the households in our neighborhood are not eligible for that program. Or if that the landlord might not be there. They might not live in the city, they might not live in the state, they might not live in the country. And so if no one brings it to their attention that this sidewalk is dilapidated, or that they have any responsibility to repair that sidewalk, then the sidewalks just don't get repaired. And so even though the 50-50, I mean, it's literally 50-50, even though it feels very fair on its face, the ultimate result is that neighborhoods with high rental rates have extremely poor sidewalk quality because no one's paying attention to that. So I think that we have to bring awareness to these issues. I speak out about the sidewalks often, and then put better policies in place so that we can reform the issue. So right now, what we can do is we, as a neighborhood association or as individuals, can find a sidewalk that's down, call 311 and say, this sidewalk's not in great condition, and then go to the next block and do the same thing, and generate calls about an address. And usually once you have a lot of calls about a lot of addresses, then that area might get fixed. Or as a neighborhood association, we can report infrastructure that needs improvement annually to the city. But usually you're put on a list, like a waiting list, and you don't quite know where you are. And so building relationships has been great for us with the city. They've been very responsive, but I think we can still do better. We can have more reform when it comes to sidewalks. We can have something that, maybe there's a sidewalk audit process that neighborhood associations can do, and just provide a whole list to the city instead of needing to call in address by address. Maybe we could have a tiered system where if you do have a lower income homeowner, that they could get a split that's fair for them and their income. We're super creative. Fort Wayne touts itself as a city that saved itself. So I think surely, we can figure out the sidewalk issue too.
You talk about that you're an intentional neighbor. What is that? What does that mean?
It just means that I try to be a decent human being. I think,
Now you live in the Mount Vernon Park neighborhood, right?
Yes. I should. A good portion of Bridge of Grace's staff lives in the neighborhood because we think it's important that we all have a vested interest in the community where we are.
That's what they're trying to say, to look at with police, that, or, you know, that they should be able to live within the communities of which they police, but, you know, to make the difference. So what do you think is, why do you think that's important, that you all live in the neighborhood?
It's important because the people we serve are our friends. You know, they're not just our clients. They're people that we love. They're people that we see on the way to work. They're folks that we pray with. And so having that relationship is incredibly important. Two, it builds trust. You know, people, well, I'll say two, it builds trust. And then three, the issues facing our community are our issues. You know, my neighbor doesn't have to come and tell me, man, this trash company has trash on our streets when they pick it up. I see it.
Right.
I experience it. I know about it. And I'm right there with them saying, okay, how are we going to fix it? So I think there's a big difference between walking alongside and being with and being in community with, rather than kind of swooping in from above and trying to fix something for someone. I think being a neighbor, you love the people that you're working with. Yeah.
So at the end of each And Good Company program, I ask guests the same 12 questions that French novelist Marcel Proust popularized from a Victorian parlor game.
Oh my goodness.
And he believed that by answering these questions, a person will reveal his or her true nature. Okay? So what is your favorite word?
Wow. We can go with that. Sure.
Okay.
What is my...
So your favorite
No,
word?
love.
Wow?
Love.
Okay, love.
Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Huh. Lots of things. People.
People? What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Not getting enough sleep.
What sound or noise do you love?
Laughter.
What sound or noise do you hate?
The alarm in the morning.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Fashion.
What profession would you not like to do?
Law.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Oh. Hopefully loving others and convincing them that they can do more than they thought.
Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
Jesus.
Okay. How would you like to die?
Peacefully.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, good and faithful servant.
I want to thank Réna for being such an enlightening and informative guest, and for her great conversation. Please join me next time when we can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.